I'm sorry, Moonless. I'm sorry.
If you asked me 5 years ago if I thought that Microsoft would be backing a pirate-themed, co-op-focused, shared-world adventure game as one of their high-profile exclusives, I'd have said that you're crazy. Sea of Thieves just doesn't fit into their standard portfolio that we've seen over the years. One that has mainly consisted of Halo, Forza, and Gears of War. At certain points in the development of Sea of Thieves, I was thoroughly convinced that this game would never actually release. Nevertheless, Sea of Thieves is finally here. It's exactly what it was billed as, an adventure game that puts players in the boots of a pirate, where the main objective is taking to the high seas for adventure and treasure hunting. There's no backstory here. The player experience on a session-to-session basis is the story of the game. The narrative of each adventure is created by the player or party of players, while adhering to some loose rules that have been incorporated by Rare to give the game some semblance of structure, progression, and variety. Sea of Thieves is not homogeneous. One player's experience with the game will not be the same experience that other players have. It's seemingly been designed so that any Sea of Thieves owner can jump into any game at any point and play with others without having to worry about things like player level, experience, or skill. It's certainly an odd combination of goals that Rare has set for the game, but ones that they've met with the retail release of Sea of Thieves. This game is a stunner on the visual front. We'll say this right up front, Sea of Thieves is looking like frontrunner for Water of the Year 2018. Players are thrown into random instances upon firing up the game, and the visual palette that they'll find is diverse and equally beautiful, whether sailing during blue sky days, torrential downpours, or any number of different variants in between. The sounds of the game are equally impressive, from wind whipping through the sails of your ship and creaking floorboards to the music that players can crank out of a variety of different instruments. Rare has nailed the presentation of Sea of Thieves, and it continues to impress over and over again in this regard. Reviewing this on the Xbox One X, the game plays in 4K resolution at 30 frames per second. It would have been nice to see more visual customization options, say something like a number of other games offer in trading pixel count for higher frame rate. As we said, the gameplay of Sea of Thieves can be different in any single game that you play. You can queue up for 4-player multiplayer and tackle any number of objectives with friends or random Xbox Live players on a galleon ship, or set sail by yourself or with one other player on a smaller sloop. Once in-game, it's entirely up to you in what you'd like to accomplish. Do you want to lay on the beach, drink, and play music? That's certainly one option. Do you want to tackle challenges set forth by one of the game's 3 factions? That's another idea as well. You could also go looking for steeper challenges in world events, or hunt down other treasure hunters and try to steal their treasure. Regardless of what you choose, I think the core gameplay loop funnels back into finding treasure and getting it back to one of the game's many ports of call. This in itself is fun, if somewhat repetitive due to design decisions by Rare. Do you play well with others? If so, Sea of Thieves can be a lot of fun to play with random people. But since the game is so heavily focused on the shared experience, this isn't a game that we recommend playing by yourself. Sure, you can do it, but it's not quite as fun as playing with others. If you've got 3 other friends that are going to play the game with you, Sea of Thieves is a blast. If you're relying on matchmaking for this experience, it's going to be a crapshoot. Our experience in playing with random players ranged from incredibly good to downright awful. Sea of Thieves relies that players work together to perform common goals. Just getting from point A to point B is a team effort on a large ship, with numerous things to take into consideration like navigation, angling the sails, dropping anchor, and spotting threats or opportunities. A single weak link in this chain can ruin the experience for all. If anything, Rare has a lot of faith in the Sea of Thieves player base, because the flip side of this coin is something that isn't very fun. For new players that are trying to play the game with random Xbox players, they can experience this bad side of Sea of Thieves, run into a 3-member team of miscreants, and they can simply throw you in the ship's jail cell if they feel like it. Run into a queue of solo players and you might have 1 or 2 that are working with you, while a third is actively trying to hamper your progress. The solution to this problem is playing by yourself, but as we said, the solo experience in Sea of Thieves leaves something to be desired. While this aspect of the game has been tailored to the solo player with a more manageable, smaller ship to captain, the gameplay doesn't quite have the same feel as it does when working in concert with others. The great moments of Sea of Thieves aren't easily recreated, but they do happen. A well-orchestrated loot heist in the game can see players stuffing themselves in cannons and firing themselves onto the decks of an unsuspecting vessel. Players can also run into a giant enemy called the Kraken, which can snatch players up from the ship with its giant tentacles, or grab the ship itself. These magical moments seem to be the exception though, rather than the rule. There's a lack of these high points in the game, and it feels like Rare leans in a little too heavily on letting players make the fun for themselves, rather than throwing things at them. Which leads you to think that once you've seen or experienced these high points, the second time around won't be quite the same. It's not a stretch to think that Sea of Thieves won't be quite as fun in a month as it is today. The missions that players take on to further this progression can feel quite similar to each other, leaving the game feeling like you're living the mundane life of a pirate with the potential to possibly see something that you haven't already seen. So what does keep players coming back? Customization is another thing, and here I think that Rare has also stumbled in their implementation of different customization options, or the lack thereof. There's a serious lack of customization for things like ships themselves. Never mind that there are only 2 different ship models in the game, but it seems like they could have done a lot more in allowing a group of players to establish a unique identity. That funnels down to single characters as well. The customization options feel somewhat limited here at launch for Sea of Thieves, leaving little desire to grind for the expensive customization options. One day in from launch, and I'm okay with what my avatar looks like. And for a game that uses this mechanic to keep players engaged, this is not a good thing. Perhaps we've yet to see everything. After all, this is a review in progress. We haven't quite reached a final verdict on the game at this point, and there's still more to see, according to the game itself. Whether that's actually true or not is another question entirely. At this point, we're worried that we've already seen most of what Sea of Thieves has to offer.